today class we are going to learn the who, what, why, when, and where, and how to tell us the key details of the story. If you'll remember yesterday, we learned about key details in a story and how to find those and how they support the main idea. So today we're going to learn how to ask these questions to help us find the key details in a story. So you'll see on the board I put, today I will know how to express the most important parts of the story using who, what, where, when, why, and how to show understanding of key details in a text. I've underlined the important parts of our note. Okay, so we're going to review the story that we read yesterday called The Biggest Apple Ever. Now, I know you remember the story, but we're going to reread it just to refresh our minds. So it's The Biggest Apple Ever by Stephen Kroll. All right. Once there were two mice who fell in love with the same apple pie, but you had to be there to see how it happened. On opening day at Mouseville School, the principal, Mr. Mouser, made an announcement. We will be learning about apples this fall, and to get things started, we will have a contest. Whoever brings in the biggest apple to his teacher will win a special prize. So you see in the classroom, we have all the students with the teacher, and they're listening to the announcement that who is making? The principal, that's right. I have an apple tree in my backyard, said Penelope. I bet it has really big apples. There's an apple tree across from my house, said James. I'm going to climb it as soon as I get home. I don't have any apple trees, said Clayton, the house mouse, but I'm going to find Mrs. Mousley the biggest apple ever. Who's Mrs. Mousley? It didn't really tell us, but we did see the teacher sitting here in the classroom, so we can assume that Mrs. Mousley is their teacher. No, you're not, said his friend Desmond, the field mouse. I am. Oh, yes, said Clayton. Yes, said Desmond. So we've met four more characters, Penelope and James and Desmond and Clayton. And they're trying to find the biggest apple to win the apple contest at their school. All the way home on the school bus, Clayton and Desmond talked about the contest. Maybe I could grow an apple tree with really big apples, said Clayton. It takes too long, said Desmond. I heard Mrs. Mousley say 6 years. I'll think of something, said Clayton. So will I, said Desmond. When Clayton got off the bus, he sneaked back into town to see what Penelope and James were up to. Penelope had come down from her tree. She was carrying 2 tiny apples. James was still up in the tree across the street. He was picking very small apples. Clayton knew he had seen bigger ones at the market. When Desmond came by a little later, he realized the same thing. So they're plotting to see what the other people are doing and if they're going to be able to find a bigger apple. The next day at school, Penelope and James brought in their tiny apples. No one else had brought in anything. Mrs. Mousley cleared her throat. Class, we have a lot of work to start the year, but because we are learning about apples and having an apple contest, we will go to Barnaby's orchard this afternoon. Everyone got very excited. I'm going to find the winning apple, said Clayton. I'm going to find the winning apple, said Desmond. At the orchard, Mrs. Mousley pointed out the different kinds of apples. Then everyone disappeared into the trees looking for a winner. Clayton walked down one row, craning his neck. Desmond walked down another row, craning his neck. Then Clayton saw what he thought was a really big apple. It was a little too high to reach, but he stretched for it. At that moment, Desmond saw the very same apple on the very same branch. He stretched for it too. They bumped heads and fell down. I think we should bring this apple in together, said Clayton. No one said we couldn't, said Desmond. So they're still plotting to try to find the biggest apple and win the apple contest. But when they got back to the bus, James had an apple that was even bigger. The apple was so big he could hardly carry it. Clayton and Desmond looked at each other. What would they do now? That night at dinner, Clayton explained the problem to his dad. Said Dad. Apples don't come in too many sizes. Do you think you'll find a bigger one? I don't know, said Clayton. Then maybe James will win the prize this time. It's okay if he does. Over at Desmond's house, Uncle Vernon said exactly the same thing. but Clayton and Desmond were still determined. The next afternoon, they met at Barnaby's orchard. They picked 2 huge baskets of apples, but nothing they found was bigger than the apple James had picked. You know, Clayton said, I think Dad was right. This time, James gets to win, but we've got all these apples. Why don't we bake a big apple pie? Desmond laughed. Great, let's bake the biggest apple pie ever, and we'll make it for our class. Clayton nodded, and I think I know where we'll find a pie pan that's big enough. The following afternoon, Desmond arrived at Clayton's house with Uncle Vernon. Everything's packed up and ready, Clayton said. It's all in Dad's truck. But where are we going, Desmond asked. You'll find out in a minute, said Clayton. Dad drove with Clayton and Desmond beside him in the front seat. Uncle Vernon stayed in back with the apples and other ingredients for the giant pie. As they came around a corner, Desmond gasped, Tony's Pizza. Of course, said Clayton. What could be better than a giant pizza pan? Mr. Tony greeted them at the door. Welcome, welcome. We are ready to begin. And so they got to work making the dough for the crust, kneading it, rolling out half into a big circle, and spreading it over the deep dish pan. Then everyone peeled and sliced the apples, mixed together the sugar and spices, and spread the rest of the dough on top. Wow, said Clayton and Desmond. When they were finished, wow, wow, wow. An hour, said Mr. Tony, give me an hour. The giant pan just fit into his huge oven. The next day was Friday. Who would have the largest apple? James, of course. And Mr. Mouser handed him the prize, a cheddar cheese apple. Mrs. Mousley looked surprised. Clayton, Desmond, nothing from you? The 2 of them grinned. At the same moment, the classroom door flew open. In came Clayton's dad, Uncle Vernon, and Mr. Tony, struggling to carry the giant pie by themselves. How wonderful, said Mrs. Mousley. That's the biggest apple pie ever. We made it for the whole class, said Clayton. All of us together, said Desmond. They shared a high five, and everyone in the class had a very big slide. Okay, so y'all remember that's our story, the biggest apple ever. And we've read through it and we've pointed out key details, but today we're going to learn how, like I said earlier, how we can ask the questions who, what, where, when, why, and how to understand the key details, which will help us understand what the story is trying to tell us. Okay, so I'm going to write these words on the board. We'll do it right here. And we're going to go through this story and pick out the answers to these questions. Okay. So we're going to reference our story as we're doing this. So tell me, who are our characters in the story? You remember? We had James and Penelope, right? And Desmond. Yep, so we have James, Penelope, Desmond, and what was the last one's name? Clayton. So, and there were other characters like the principal and the teacher, but our main characters were James and Penelope, and we see them kind of disappear after the beginning of the story, and it's focused on Desmond and Clayton. Now, what is happening in this story? What are these mice friends trying to do? That's right. And what are they doing that for? Okay. Where is this taking place? That's right. Remember the name of the school? Mouseville School. And we see them at their homes and at the apple orchard. And one more place, the pizza place. So there's quite a few settings that we get to go to in this story. Okay, let's move over here to when. Now, this one's going to take a little bit of thinking. It did tell us But also I want you to think about what did we say we were doing? We're trying to find what? And that's right. And when do we find, what time of year do we see apples growing? The fall, that's right. But if we go back to the second page, it says on opening day at Mouseville School, we will be learning about apples this fall. So you can kind of use your brains a little bit to think apples, fall time, but it also tells us a little bit right there. So it's the first day of school and we're near fall time, right? Okay, why are they doing this? We kind of answered this in the what, but what are these My Screen students trying to accomplish? That's right. Okay, and how do they go about doing it? Okay. Okay, and there's one more thing that they do. Do you remember James and Penelope did it at the beginning? They thought about the apple trees at their own homes and they climbed up in those, but then they realized they weren't that big. And they found bigger apples at the apple orchard. Okay, so we've answered these questions and we figured out kind of what's going on in this story. And at the end of the story, we realized that Desmond and Clayton learned that they're probably not going to win the contest, but that's okay. They still have all these apples and they can still do something really cool. They didn't have the biggest apple, but they did make a pretty big apple pie. Okay, so now we're going to get into groups. So, I'm sorry. We're going to go over our vocabulary that'll help us remember how to look for these things in stories. So if you'll see, first we have how, and what you want to ask yourself is in what way? How is this happening in the story? And then we have what. What is the thing or things that has happened? What's going on? And when you have multiple characters like this, you may have a few things going on. That's why it says things. When, the time that things happen. So is it in the morning? Is it at nighttime? Is it in the fall or the summer? Is it when it's hot or when it's cold? You can look for details like that to tell you when the story is taking place. Where, the place that things happen. So where is this happening? And again, we see in this story that there's several places that this story takes place at. Who, so who's the people involved? And usually we're going to be looking for the main characters. We've learned about main characters before. That's who the story is talking about. And there will always be some added characters in there, but what we're trying to figure out is who is this story about? And then why? Why are they doing the things that they're doing that we're looking for in the what? And so from this story, we've been able to answer all these questions. Another few vocabulary words that will help you when looking for these answers is character. So what is a character? And these are things we've learned before. A character is a person who appears in a story. Conflict, is there a problem or disagreement? Yes, and we see that in the what and the how. They're trying to win a contest, the why. They're trying to win this contest, and when you have several people trying to win a contest, you're going to have some conflict. Detail, so a small or less important part of something. Event, something that happens. The event is the contest. The setting, which we talked about, is where, so it's at Mouseville School. And then the summary, which is a short piece of speaking or writing that gives the most important information about something. Okay, so you can remember these vocabulary words as you're working on your own to figure out who, what, where, when, how, and why. Okay, so now I'm going to give you, we're going to get into groups, and I'm going to give you this note card, and you can, I want you to get together with each other, and I want you to talk about what you took away from this story. So an example is, my favorite character of The Biggest Apple Ever was Penelope, because she immediately knew where she was going to look for her apple. Or, you can get together and just talk about things like that from the story. And just write a few answers down on your postcard. And I will come around and observe and make sure you don't need any help. Just go around, go through the who, what, when, why, how, go through all those and just pick out 2 or 3 of your favorite, 2 that stood out to you. Like when we're talking about who, we're talking about the characters, right? So who was your favorite character? Or what? What in this story stands out to you that they're trying to do? Or how they try to resolve conflict. Just pick out 2 or 3 things that stood out to you in this story that would answer the questions who, what, where, when, why, and how. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. So tell me, let's go over and see what your favorite parts of the story were. Tell me one thing that you wrote on your postcard list. Okay. Why were they your favorite?
They knew they weren't going to win.
That's right. They turned their lemons into lemonade, didn't they? Or their apples into apple pie. Okay, thank you for sharing that with us. So what we're going to do now is I have a worksheet that you're going to work independently on. But before we do that, we're going to read the short little story at the top together. Do you want to read it out loud for us?
Jamie spent a beautiful Saturday with her grandpa on the fishing boat. He picked her up at the house very early in the morning and stopped for breakfast on the way to his favorite fishing spot, Lake Francisco. Once they arrived at the lake, Grandpa put a worm on Jamie's hook, then showed her where to cast the line. Where they waited for the fish to bite, Grandpa told Jamie stories about his childhood in Italy. Suddenly, Jamie's fish pole bobbed down sharply. She quickly began to reeling her catch as Grandpa reached for the net. A few moments later, Jamie lifted the trout out of the water and into the net. Grandpa was so proud of Jamie, he took a picture of her holding the fry.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the directions say read the story and answer the questions below. So we read the story, and now down here at the bottom, you'll see we're just going through the same thing: who, when, what, where, why, and how. So I want you to answer these questions, and I want you to see if you can do it on your own. If you need help, I'll be happy to assist you. Here's your worksheet. Okay, so let's go through this together. And I want you to switch papers with your partners and check each other's to see if you got it right. Okay, so who are the characters in this story? Jamie and Grandpa. I'm gonna start over here. Make sure you can see to check it right. Jamie and Grandpa. All right. When does this story take place? In the morning? A really big thing, guys, to remember is that you can always refer back to your story to pick out the answer. So it happened on a beautiful Saturday in the fishing boat. He picked her up very early in the morning. Good job. So it's on a Saturday. That's very specific. And it's early in the morning. Okay? Then what's the next one? What happened in the story? Very good. Okay. Where does this story take place? That's right. Okay. Why did Jamie go fishing with her grandfather? Okay, to enjoy his favorite spot or thing to do, right? Okay. Let's scroll down so we can see the next question. How did Jamie catch a fish?
She threw it out.
Okay. So you see on this worksheet, did everybody do good? Okay, good. So you can see on this worksheet, we're not just saying who, question mark. You can ask specifically, who are the characters in this story? So who relates with what from our vocabulary? Who relates with character? Remember our vocabulary word character? Here it is. A person who, there you see that word appears in the story. Okay, so you get the idea through that we're not just saying who question mark, but we're saying who is the character in the story. What is not just what question mark, but it's what is happening in the story. Here we see what happened in the story, right? So you can put your who, what, when, where, why, and how vocabulary words with your character, setting, conflict, those type of vocabulary words, okay? All right, does anybody have any questions about how to ask these questions to find and understand key details in a text? Okay, well, thank you guys. You've done awesome today.